The fact that she has blue eyes, and then she says, I have great genes, because she's wearing jeans. But according to the woke people, this means that she's a white supremacist. It also doesn't help that her bra size is 36 kkk. And again, all the research shows that these trigger warnings don't even work. What they do is reinforce the idea that trauma is central to your identity and that you should let it define you instead of dealing with it, dispatching it, and moving beyond it. People wonder why the younger generations have so much anxiety. It's this stuff. Lots of stuff makes us uncomfortable. You know what makes me uncomfortable? This bullshit.
Sydney Sweeney's situation might look settled at first glance, but think again. The backlash hasn't faded, especially from the loud corners of the activist left who are still pressing to push her out over a harmless advertisement. In a way, it's predictable. Online outrage rarely rests, and every small moment becomes a chance to spark another uproar. Then Bill Maher steps in and dismantles the reaction piece by piece. What follows is sharp, biting, and surprisingly funny. Buckle up, because the response comes fast and loud.
In other uncomfortable racial news, it's sad news. We found out this week that Sydney Sweeney is that was just, no, she's not. But you will see the ad that she's out there. This is a very important ad that we're seeing now. There she is, dressed like Jay Leno in all blue denim. And she talks about the fact that she has blue eyes, and then she says, I have great genes, because she's wearing jeans. But according to the woke people, this means that she's a white supremacist. It also doesn't help that her bra size is 36K.
Anyone looking at the ad with a level head could tell it was simple wordplay, a playful moment with no hidden message, no agenda, and certainly no nod to hateful ideas. Still, the usual critics managed to inflate it into a full-blown crisis, acting as if Sweeney had rewritten history just by appearing on screen. Maher, known for never tiptoeing around hurt feelings, responds in his own style. He cracks a straight-faced joke about the internet treating her bra size like some secret signal, painting her as a comic book-level threat. The joke lands because it mirrors the absurdity of the reaction itself. It's a moment that captures the chaos of modern outrage culture perfectly. Loud, overblown, and detached from reality. And in that moment, the comedy works, not because it's mean, but because it's honest, precise, and fearless enough to say what many are already thinking.
I will say this, they should have been aware when they wrote this ad that this is what some people were going to think. I don't think they did it on purpose, but I also think it's pretty funny that all the online social justice girls are like, it's racist. There's no such thing as good genes. Right, and then you go on Tinder and swipe left on every bald guy.
The people behind the campaign understood from the start that an overblown reaction was almost guaranteed. They weren't surprised by it. And frankly, no one else should have been either. In a society that values freedom, creativity shouldn't need approval from self-appointed outrage enforcers. People should be free to express ideas, crack jokes, and experiment without worrying about being swarmed online. As long as speech stays within the law, it's protected. That's the core purpose of free expression. Imperfect opinions, uncomfortable humor, and pointed sarcasm deserve the same protection as ideas that feel safe and familiar.
Put a trigger warning on trigger warnings. A new study from Flinders University analyzed a dozen other studies on trigger warnings, and they all came to the same conclusion. They don't work. Not only don't they protect your feelings, but if you actually have been traumatized by something they're warning you about, a trigger warning makes it worse. It's like if seatbelts were made out of broken glass. It winds up just being a reenactment of the old joke, how do you keep in suspense? I'll tell you later.
What's especially striking is that some critics of Sweeney's ad demanded a trigger warning, as if a playful commercial suddenly required the same caution as a serious psychological drama. They argued viewers needed shielding from content they labeled inappropriate. Bill Maher quickly pushed back, pointing out what should be obvious. Trigger warnings don't work the way people think they do. Curiosity almost always wins. Tell someone not to look at something, and they immediately want to see it. That's basic human behavior. In reality, a warning label wouldn't have protected anyone. It would have fueled more clicks, more outrage, and even more frantic commentary from those who thrive on being offended. Maher's point is simple but sharp. Warnings tend to amplify reactions, not calm them. In this case, the very people asking for protection would have rushed to watch the ad the moment a caution sign appeared, proving his argument exactly right. Mars keeps his comparison sharp and to the point.
Now, for those of you who have been living on an offshore oil rig for the last 10 years and don't know what I'm talking about, a trigger warning is a kind of close your eyes, here comes an ouchie, that, like so many bad ideas in recent years, got started on college campuses. Students started demanding them so they could get ready in case something in a book or a piece of art or a history lesson reminded them that life included bad things and not just good, and sometimes people were mean. You can't have that just sprung on you. Several universities in recent years have even compiled lists of words we should be warned about to get rid of altogether, including balls to the wall, no can do, you guys, master, white paper, man in the middle, jip, off the reservation.
Life doesn't pause to give advance notice when trouble shows up. There are no alarms, labels, or polite heads-up messages before hardship, harsh truths, or sudden challenges arrive. So he asks a simple question: why should college classrooms be any different? By the time you're sitting in a university lecture hall, you're legally an adult, supposedly preparing for the real world. If you can manage relationships, jobs, rent, nonstop online chaos, and whatever else life throws your way, then handling a difficult topic without emotional padding shouldn't be impossible. Maher leans into the irony. Many of the same students asking for extra emotional cushioning often take part in behavior that would have shocked earlier generations. Wild parties, explicit entertainment.
We can't say virgin as opposed to what? Person experiencing not getting laid? You would think that one would take the cake for the oversensitivity, but the students at Brandeis said, "Hold my baby bottle." They made a list of expressions they don't want to hear because they remind them of violence. Terms like it, beating a dead horse, and yes, even trigger warning.
Unfiltered online trends, and more. Yet suddenly, a classroom discussion becomes too much. The logic doesn't add up. In his view, trigger warnings aren't protecting anyone. Instead, they quietly encourage fragility, teaching people to expect comfort rather than resilience. He extends that criticism to language itself. Overly elaborate phrases that are clearly unnecessary end up saying very little. Even when a substitute term is technically accurate, it often makes communication harder, not clearer. Take a simple, well-known word like virgin, which sometimes gets replaced with a long, awkward description. Instead of sounding thoughtful, it comes off like a line from a parody. Still, this kind of forced rebranding is eagerly embraced by those chasing moral points. The result isn't progress, it's clutter. Complexity is mistaken for virtue, and confusion dresses itself up as correctness. Real understanding gets lost, conversations slow down, and meaning becomes distorted. In the end, these rigid language games don't help anyone.
At some point, the trigger warning escaped from campus and got out into the real world, and now they're everywhere. Warnings at the top of Reddit threads and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram posts. Warnings before your favorite serial series, before news articles. Disney put an advisory on the movie Dumbo, warning viewers about stereotypes because otherwise you might think it was a documentary about flying elephants. Turner Classic Movies still wants to show you classic movies, but before we do, first there are a few parts we'd like you to feel really bad about. Now enjoy the show. Theaters do it now too. The storied Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis tipped off their crowd that a play included simulated strobe lights and haze.
They just get in the way of honest, clear communication. Trigger warnings can sometimes reach the point of absurdity. Consider a simple haze in a theater. What harm could that possibly cause? It's just stage fog used to enhance lighting effects, not a hidden psychological tripwire. Yet some argue it must be handled with extreme caution, as if a faint mist could unearth deep trauma in the audience. The idea that a harmless fog could trigger memories of nightmares or past suffering is patently ridiculous. Warnings like this, when applied to every minor detail, lose their purpose and start to irritate instead of protect. Not every situation requires a caution sign. Sometimes harmless really means harmless. Bill Maher captures this perfectly. He argues that true healing doesn't come from avoiding discomfort entirely. Trauma shouldn't be allowed to dictate life choices indefinitely.
Research shows that these trigger warnings don't even work. What they do is reinforce the idea that trauma is central to your identity and that you should let it define you instead of dealing with it, dispatching it, and moving beyond it. People wonder why the younger generations have so much anxiety. It's this stuff. Lots of stuff makes us uncomfortable. You know what makes me uncomfortable? This bull. People who start every conversation with, as a person who, as a survivor of, I'm triggered every time I see a trigger warning. Because I'm reminded of how weak my country has become.
The healthiest approach is to confront it, ideally with professional guidance, trusted support, or honest reflection. Trigger warnings don't offer real protection. In fact, they can make the issues they warn about seem bigger and more threatening than they are. By constantly flagging certain topics as dangerous, they train the mind to expect distress before it even arrives, keeping people stuck in a loop of anticipation and fear. Rather than building resilience, they quietly undermine it. Maher's point is simple yet profound. Running away from challenges doesn't make you stronger. Facing difficult situations gradually, safely, and with proper support does. Over time, those experiences lose their power to control you. In his words, every time a trigger warning appears, it paradoxically becomes a source of its own anxiety, a lesson in how avoidance can do more harm than good. Avoid hiding behind endless trigger warnings. At first, they may seem comforting, but in reality, they encourage avoidance. They quietly suggest that the world is dangerous, that you're too fragile to handle discomfort, and that stepping beyond your emotional comfort zone is risky. Over time, this mindset doesn't protect you. It fuels the very fears you're trying to overcome, weakens your resilience, and heightens anxiety. True strength comes from exposure. Facing challenges gradually diminishes their power over you, builds confidence.
I'm triggered every time I see a trigger warning. Because I'm reminded of how weak my country has become. It's like wearing a mask on your mind. We keep finding out about new health problems kids have from being locked inside for 3 years, exposed only to filtered air during the COVID era. Turns out that's not healthy. But you know, there is an alternative way of dealing with anxiety. And let me put it in comic book terms so the kids can relate. Bruce Wayne, you're familiar, was afraid of bats. So what did he do? He became Batman. That's the way to go.
And reveals just how capable you really are. Courage grows not from caution or indulgence, but through resilience, life experience, and learning to endure temporary setbacks. The Sydney Sweeney controversy is a perfect example of today's inflated outrage culture. A harmless advertisement escalated into a national spectacle. Trigger warnings were demanded for the most trivial reasons, and simple language was twisted into awkward, exaggerated alternatives in the name of sensitivity. Bill Maher cuts through the chaos with sharp precision. Life doesn't come with warnings, and pretending it does only fosters fragility, not resilience. Trauma isn't healed with trigger warnings, they amplify it. They don't solve cultural conflicts, they just make the noise louder.
Because honestly, we cannot go any further in the other direction we've been going in. We've already passed the point of parity. A student group in Australia recently called for trigger warnings on eye contact. Even the Taliban are okay with eyes. Eye contact? Were you traumatized as a child after losing a staring contest? What's next? Trigger warnings for conversations? Having everyone walk around with name tags that say, "Hi, I'm Dave. Please don't bring up doorknobs."
We can't wrap reality in protective bubble wrap for every joke, ad, or theater haze. True strength and mental balance come from facing life directly. Maher's critique is a clear, timely reminder of that. This wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click like and subscribe for more content like this.